I got fascinated because if you can turn on their stress response just by thought alone, and the long-term effects downregulate genes and create disease, then our thoughts can make us sick. And I was like, oh my God, these people realized innately that when they forgave, what is forgiveness? When I discovered it was just overcoming the emotion. You just finish the emotion, and now you have wisdom, because the memory without the emotional charge is called wisdom. And when you overcome the emotion, you no longer have your attention on that person or problem, and it's all okay, right? So free the body from the chains of the past, and it can become renewed again. And so it was very interesting to see that many of these people, without knowing it or not, stopped signaling the same genes in the same way when they overcame that emotional state. They were like, I hate my job. I hate my relationship. I'm going to just make choices. If I only have 6 months to live, I'm going to live happy. I don't want to live unhappy. I'm going to choose to the choosing, right? And if you're choosing, you're changing. If you're not choosing, you're not changing. If you're not changing, you're not choosing, right? So they made a choice, and the hardest part about change is not making the same choices you did the day before. And get ready, the moment you do, you can intellectualize, but it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be unpredictable. It's going to be unfamiliar. There's going to be some uncertainty. You're stepping into the unknown. And if the addiction of those emotions, where the body's been conditioned to be the mind, the body starts telling the mind to return back to the known. It's dark tomorrow, you're a failure, it's your mother's fault, you were abused, I need a brain scan, there's something's wrong with you, this isn't right. All of the voices come up because the body's wanting you to think the same way, so you can make the same choice, so you can do the same thing, so you can create the same experience, so you can feel the same emotion and return back to that familiar. Why does the body want you to stay in a familiar place of fear and stress when it's not the most optimal place to be in this just war? I think it because the emotions cause us to see the future through the lens of the past, because the emotion is a record of the past. So you're always planning for the worst thing to happen when you're in that state. So the body has been conditioned to be the mind, the servant is the master, and the programs like, how do you open a doorknob? Well, you may not consciously remember, but you'd go, oh, you do it this way. Well, your body knows how to do it better than your conscious mind. It's 95% of who we are is those automatic behaviors, emotional responses. So epigenetics says the environment signals the gene, but the end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion. So the body's so objective that when it's living in an emotional state, it's believing it's living in the same past experience 24 hours a day. So not knowing it consciously, the person, when they surrendered the emotion and they overcame the emotion, they are no longer signaled the same genes in the same way. If they're no longer behaving the same way, there's behavior-dependent genes that are no longer a signal. There are experience-dependent genes. If you stop having the same experiences, you'll stop signaling those same genes, and genes make proteins. And proteins are responsible for the structure and function of your body, and the expression of proteins is the expression of life. So without knowing it, they changed. They became so conscious of their unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that they wouldn't go unconscious to them in their waking day. They knew that old self had to be retired. And how many times do we have to forget until we stop forgetting and start remembering? Really, that's the moment of change, right? So they went through that dark night of change and making a different choice and stepping into the unknown. And of course, the body wants to be in the familiar because we've been conditioned that the unknown is a dangerous place, and you run from the unknown when you're living in survival. So taking a chance in the unknown, if you're living in stress and living in survival, goes against what's programmed in our biology in terms of survival. Cling to the known and wait for the threat or danger to go over. But for the most part, if the body's addicted to the emotion, it's going to be constantly obsessing about the worst case scenario in our life. So breaking the addiction, the body goes through cravings, and they went through those periods where they had a neurological, a biological, a chemical, a hormonal, and genetic death of the old self. They were no longer thinking the same thoughts that made the same chemicals that created the same feelings that signaled the same genes. They were no longer firing and wiring the same circuits. And so there was dissonance going on in the brain as the brain was breaking apart its circuitry and loosening up its connections. That dissonance is the body moving out of the known. It's the unpredictable order, right? That's novelty. So the body genetically and hormonally and chemically and neurologically is going through this kind of chaotic process. But one of the other things they did really well, which was the third thing, is they said, I got to reinvent myself. I can't be that same person if I were to live my life. How would I think? How would I act if I had a new life with my ex, with my coworkers, with my kids, with my spouse? How would I behave differently if I'm not going to behave this way? Because this way is making me feel really bad and really unhappy. And no one's going to make me happy but me, Unme. So how am I going to be and behave in my life? And then really the greatest part of it all is that they started thinking about, how do I want to feel? Like, I don't want to feel resentment and impatience and frustration any longer. I want to feel gratitude. I want to feel joy. I want to feel inspired. I want to be in love. These are the feelings I want to create. Can I teach my body emotionally what that future life looks like before it happens? And this was where it got really exciting for me, because they weren't visualizing their disease going away. They weren't doing their inward work to heal. They were doing their inward work to change. And when they changed, they healed, right? So if a belief is just a thought you keep thinking over and over again until it's hardwired in your brain and becomes automatic, right? So if their belief is that they can't heal, could I install a new belief? Can I keep remembering that belief, keep firing and wiring it? And if I keep firing and wiring, am I going to install the hardware? If I keep doing it over and over again, after I'm firing and wiring new circuits and I have the hardware, the circuits fire easier the more I do it and become like a software program. Could that be the new belief, the new voice in my head that says, I can heal? So with intention and attention, they kept reminding themselves what they did want to believe. In other words, they kept remembering to think that way. And if you keep doing it over and over again, of course, that's a belief. To truly believe in a new possibility, you must first believe in yourself. If you believe in yourself, you must also embrace that new possibility. One cannot exist without the other. When you transition from your old self to your new self, you will encounter the deeply ingrained beliefs that say, you can't do this, it's too hard, you'll never change, no one has done this before. These are the barriers set by your past. It's not just about visualizing with your eyes closed. It's about living it with your eyes open. So when people start asking themselves, how am I going to be in my new life? They begin rehearsing it in their minds, planning their behaviors. They close their eyes and ask, what would greatness look like today? What would love do today? How can I respond or act differently in a way that's loving to me? What would be the greatest expression of myself? By thinking about how they would behave, they start to install new circuits in their brains. They're priming their minds, setting up the neural pathways to be used. The more they practice this, the easier it becomes to act in alignment with their vision. They keep feeling the emotions of their future and stop feeling the old emotions. This creates a new chemical state in their bodies. When you truly feel the emotion and have the intention to behave and think that way, the stronger the emotion, the more you remember to act and think in that manner. And if you can memorize that emotion, the body's so objective that it believes it's living in a new environment. It doesn't know the difference between the real life experience that's creating the emotion and the emotion the person's creating by thought alone. And on some level, they started to transition to this new person and the side effect of their change. They were sleeping better through the night. They started having less anxiety. They started noticing that their pain levels went away. They started to notice that they could eat more different foods. So they started to see the experiment working, like, oh my God. And I talked to some people. I remember talking to some people, and they were like, yeah, my diagnosis was 20 years ago. my diagnosis was 6 years ago. They told me I had a year to live, and like, I'm so happy. And yeah, it just went away. And, so I was mystified by that. And that kind of started the journey. And the last thing they had in common, which I found so fascinating, was something that I experienced as well. When they closed their eyes and decided who they no longer wanted to be, and they decided who they did want to be, they were crossing that river of change while doing their inner work. They lost track of space and time. When they opened their eyes, they thought only 15 minutes had passed, but it was an hour and 15 minutes. They were like, I don't know what happened. So I started looking into the research on which part of the brain can make thought more real than anything else. It's the frontal lobe. I've read every researcher and every single research paper, every book on the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is like a volume control. It's the creative center. When you have an idea, speculation, invention, or when you're looking at possibility, it switches on. It's the CEO, the symphony leader, and it oversees the entire brain, calling up different circuits of knowledge and experience that you have and seamlessly piecing them together. When it does this and the nerve cells start firing in tandem, your brain creates a holographic image, a picture, and you're selecting a new possibility. You're like, I can do that. That's possible, right? You're selecting a new possibility. That's the creative center. It's the unknown. For the passionate person, that thought in their mind literally becomes the experience, and the end product of the experience is the emotion. So the person who sees that future suddenly feels the empowerment, the success, the abundance, the gratitude from the healing. It's that thought and that feeling, that image and that emotion, that stimulus and that response that conditions the body to emotionally be in the future. Now think about this. If you're feeling the feelings of your future as if it's already happened, if your body is feeling the emotion of your future like it's already happened, you won't be looking for it. You only look for it when you feel like it hasn't happened. When it's already happened, you're no longer looking for it, which means you're no longer separate. And that's when people started having really powerful changes. So I started studying the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is like a volume control. When it switches on and you assign meaning to an act, if I said, if you did this, and I can tell you all the reasons, all the benefits, and I can give you the what and the why, and you go, I got it, I got it, I got it. And I showed you how. The moment you got the how, if you understood the what and the why, you would assign meaning to the task. The frontal lobe switches on and it wants the intentional outcome. It doesn't want a half outcome. It wants the whole thing. That's the outcome. And it's going to keep doing it until it shortens the distance between the thought and the experience. Somehow, this frontal lobe switches on and lowers the volume of the circuits in the brain that cause you to process your body, to feel your body, to be aware of anything in your environment, objects, people, bodies, things, places, and not be thinking about the future or the past. You're so locked in the present moment that space and time somehow change. And their inner world becomes more real than their outer world. It was fascinating because when they came back on some level, they felt different. So anyway, I wrote a book about it. You can call it Evolve Your Brain, The Science of Changing Your Mind. It's very heady, very academic. I think when you write your first book, you write to your biggest critics. Then there were some documentaries that came out and people started asking really important questions. The theory and the philosophy were good, but people started saying to me, okay, if your thoughts have something to do with your future or your life, how do you do it? How do you actually do it? Then the second question was, if my personality creates my personal reality, and I've got to change my personality to change my personal reality, why is it so hard to change? Most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, and it doesn't work. So, how do I change so my life changes? What a great question. I saw that it wasn't as easy to change as we think. You might say on Monday morning, I'm going to stop cursing and stop complaining. But by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're unconscious and defaulting back to the old self. How many times do I have to forget and go unconscious until I stop forgetting and start remembering? If you want to be happy, really happy in your life, you have to stop complaining, because complaining doesn't make you feel happy. If you want to be happy, you can't judge another person, because judgment won't make you feel happy. So anything that's not loving must die.